Let's welcome ourselves to a new practice. Always remembering that we are the ones who are constantly changing. Every experience, being brought to us to somehow give us a new realization, a message, pointing us, prodding us, directing us in a particular direction. What most of us tend to do is we tend to live not aware of these messages that the world around us is giving us. And so we come across a particular experience, we react in a particular way, and then the same experience repeats itself. We wind up reacting in the exact same way as before. And it keeps repeating itself and it becomes a habit. We have a particular problem, we might deal with it in a particular way. For some of us, it's switching on the TV, hiding from it, which is not bad, by the way. Let's not make any judgments. Sometimes it's reaching for a cookie. Sometimes it's if somebody says something in particular, and we'll notice that especially with people we know really well, family members, they have patterns. They will say something and we will respond in the exact same way every time. And then it almost seems as though you're stuck in a time loop where particular experiences keep presenting themselves over and over again to us, and we keep repeating. It's almost like a Groundhog Day, if you've ever seen that movie. Just because we're creatures of habit. Now this practice is about becoming a little bit more aware, heightening our awareness of these experiences around us, these people, the words that they speak, the pressures, the stresses that we sometimes face. And sometimes we try to numb ourselves to these pressures, these stresses, just because everybody else is going through them. We're beginning to define them as the normal. But this is a practice where we step outside of these habits, we step outside of these patterns and observe and try to see if you can do that now. I'm going to ring the bell. See if you can imagine yourself stepping outside of your body, outside of all these patterns, outside of your life, situation, the story that you live, the script that you live. And just observe it from a different angle. I'll ring the bell now. And I know that sounds a lot more complicated than it should, but all you need to do is just enter the present moment. And in this instance, because we're using the bell, we'll use our sense of hearing. The sense of hearing, one of the precious doorways that we have that lead us into this space that is timeless. We call it timeless because it is always the now. And here comes the bell. Imagine yourself stepping into the present moment. You can be as playful as you like about it. And as you step outside of the story that we live, these habits, these patterns, you begin to notice the beginning, the past, the future, how certain patterns might repeat themselves. And the first stage is to not judge any of these patterns as good or bad. Not judge. Not spit any of them out, but instead make peace with them. Swallow them. Allow them to be. Because when we're not aware, when we're not present, we become creatures that live completely in the mind. And the mind, it has its patterns, its momentum, its current. We often use the words, the metaphor, the stream, the thought stream, don't we? A current that's constantly flowing in a particular direction. And it's carrying us. But now we step outside of it. And in today's practice, my words will guide you towards different tools that will help you to step outside of your thoughts, your mind, your stories. And so, if you can't do it at this stage, don't worry at all. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy being in the stream. Enjoy the current. At least for now, don't try to move in the opposite direction of the current. So if the current, obviously it's going downstream. So don't try to swim upstream, because takes a lot more effort. Just let go and let the stream take you. And so whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling right now, it's all right. Because this is always the first stage in this practice, making peace with the present moment. Allowing it to be, because once the struggle is over, once the allowing begins, once the pushing against dissolves, you begin to enter into a space of clarity where you can now see more clearly, focus more clearly, understand, and then take the next step. But right now we just want to be right here at peace with all these habits, with whatever's going on in the mind. And a lot can be going on in the mind, because there have been many hours since we awoke from sleep. There was yesterday and the weekend before that, and the days and the months and the years, and then they all end up looking like an endless soap opera with many different events. And so today we practice for clarity. And this clarity, it comes as we step outside of the story. So let's begin now with some of the tools that I spoke of. tools that you know a lot about. You've probably tried every single one of these tools before. You've tasted them. And so it's very easy for these, when we begin to reintroduce ourselves to the tools in today's practice, notice the mind, and notice the mind saying with its little voice, I've done this before. I know what this practice is like. Oh, I've done that before. Yeah, no, it's going to be quite boring. I've done it. I know exactly what I experienced the last time. And then a new story begins. Now I'll ring the bell so that today we can turn today's practice into a new practice. We invoke the beginner's mind. The beginner's mind, that of the young child, before it goes to school, before it creates those filing cabinets within the mind as to what flowers are, trees are, leaves are, a car. No, we start all over again, where everything is amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen it's hard to remember what we experienced, but when you look at a young child, and if you go to a park, and you'll notice how the young kids, they'll be obsessed with little leaves, collecting leaves and sticks, and finding how incredible a little butterfly is and a flower, because to them it feels like it's the first time they're ever experiencing. And so let us invoke that experience into our life today, and explore these tools as though we were exploring them for the first time, and seeing what happens, seeing how we experience it today, because we are changing. We've changed since yesterday. We've changed since the practice last week. New cells have emerged. If you want to talk about it from a cellular level, from a scientific level, new cells have emerged within our bodies. Old cells have dissolved and left us. And doesn't that mean, since we are looking at ourselves at a cellular level, whatever physical ailments that you have right now, any chronic pains, any illnesses, pains, in 6 years, almost every cell, at least where the wet tissue is concerned, the muscle, the nerves, the blood cells, the organs, all of these will be replaced and completely new in 6 years. And if this is so, then it means we have the ability to decide the level of health and well-being of our body from this point onwards. Even the bone, we no longer have the same skull we had when we were 6 or 7 years old. The bones, the spinal column, the ribs, all of these have changed over the years, and in the same way they're constantly regenerating. And so let us begin from this point onwards with this new practice, and understand that as we step outside of our thought process, we let go of many of the stresses, the worries, the very concerns and anxieties that have caused these pains and illnesses. And so from this point onwards, we begin anew. Our years, our doorways into the present moment. And now let's activate our skin. You can start with that surface around the ears where we were welcoming the sound of the bell. So your earlobes, how the earlobes interact with the air, their ability to tune into the temperature of the space of the room that we find ourselves in right now at this moment. And then the sensitivity of the skin expanding from the ears to the other parts of the body, so that you begin to have an image of yourself sitting here, breathing, and whatever it means to be sitting here. Notice the way your legs are folded. Notice the knee joint, the angle at which the bone sits between the thighs and the shin. An indication that you may be sitting down or perhaps even lying down. The ankle, how it connects to the foot, the soles of the feet. If you're on a chair, you might be feeling your soles of the feet resting on the carpet or flooring. It's a very simple practice. All we're noticing is that what our body posture is right now. Because our eyes are closed, at least for most of us. So you're rediscovering what your posture is from within. What does it feel like to be seated? Which is the point of gravity that takes the most weight of the body? What is the surface underneath it? How hard or how soft is that surface? Watch in amazement as if it is a soft surface, how it molds itself to the body's shape. And if it is a hard surface, how the reverse occurs, how the body adapts itself and molds itself to that hard surface. The pelvic region, how the upper body rests upon the pelvic region. You can bring your attention to the very structure, the bone, the spinal column. And as you begin to become aware of your spinal column, see if you can Of course, make it as comfortable as you possibly can. Becoming aware of how important the spinal column is to our body's functioning. Many, almost all of our bodily functions somehow connected through the nerves and neurons and whatever else is the fluids and the energies within the spinal column. Electrical charges traveling through the spinal column. Let us just create a tiny little intention that we would like to align the vertebrae to enable these fluids and energies to travel more freely, more comfortably, more easily. If you can imagine a hose pipe, when those hose pipes you use to water your garden and your plants and your flowers, have you noticed how when there is a little knot or a bend, especially a sharp bend, it prevents the water from flowing very well? So now let's just inch the top end of your spinal column comfortably a little bit upward, the tail end of your spinal column a little bit downward, perhaps giving you a few millimeters of height. And then you become a little bit more aware of this posture that you are currently residing in. Tweaking it, allowing it to become a little bit more dignified, upright, hopefully comfortable as well, because there's less effort on the muscles. There's a little bit more balancing taking place now. And the spinal column, it connects through the neck to the skull. Then you begin to notice how you hold your head upright. How does this happen? If you've ever noticed a baby, a very young baby, it doesn't have that ability to hold its head upright. And there are many other illnesses, like motor neuron, where the muscle control completely leaves this area, and the particular person is unable to hold their head upright. And so we do not take any of these abilities for granted. We appreciate. We so easily take them for granted, but today we just appreciate. And perhaps release intentions that for all those going through illnesses like motor neuron disease and many others, I think even perhaps Parkinson's, who are unable to utilize these muscles. We release intentions that healing and repairs take place within their body, that allow them to resume control of these regions. Because this is a practice where we enter into a space where everything becomes possible. Everything. Simply because limitations, they exist only within the mind. We step outside of all those labels, motor neuron, the sufferer of this illness or that illness. We step outside of all of these labels, and just as we began the practice of right at the beginning, observe from the present moment. perhaps even outside of these physical bodies, observing the mind, the body, the functioning of the organs, allowing, not interfering in any way. And it's a little bit easier to observe and not interfere when you're outside, isn't it? And then we take a look at our bodies. We experience our bodies. Our bodies. Why do we use words such as our body, my body, your body? Isn't that a form of identification? We also, some of us have cars, some of us have bicycles, some of us have homes, houses, flats. My home, my flat. All of us have clothing. My blouse, my shirt, my trousers. Some of us have certain qualifications. My degree, my diploma, my whatever, my award. And then all of us have relationships. Like right now, we sit here, we're fellow practitioners, we have relationships with each other. And then there are those outside of this meditation room, the family members, friends, people we work with, colleagues. Our gadgets, the ones that we're using right now, the computers, the phones, the tablets, my this, my that. What happens when the car meets with an accident? Or if it's parked outside our homes and somebody knocks against it? Does it hurt? Yes, to some of us it does. To most of us it does, actually. We get really annoyed and upset with the person who caused that mark. If somebody spills some sort of dye or some sort of colored food on a piece of our favorite clothing, we get upset. We get upset. If somebody, hopefully this never happens, but if somebody hurts our bodies, we get upset. It hurts. A stranger enters into our homes, we get upset because they've come into our homes. Somebody steals our phones or our tablets or does something to it, damages it. Our kids, friends, we get upset. Isn't this a nice time to ask ourselves why? Identification, perhaps? The car is separate from me. How can damage to the car cause me pain? The clothing, it is separate from me. How can damage to this clothing cause me so much pain? And then you notice if it's a piece of clothing you care very little for, if it's one of those home rags that we sometimes use, or pajamas, or something which nobody will really see, it doesn't matter what happens to it. Paint can get on it. It can get ripped and we don't care. Identification. Let's use today's practice as an opportunity to step outside of this relationship we have with all of these objects, including the people in our lives. We used this example a few days ago where if a complete stranger called you on your phone and said nasty things to you, an unknown number, you're not familiar with it, and then they said something unpleasant, you would just shrug it off. You'd smile and say, wrong number, not for me. And then you'd look at the people around you with a really puzzled face and say, wrong number, I don't know what that was about. And you'd move on to your next task. And then if we were to contrast that with someone we knew well, if somebody we knew immensely well, a colleague, a family member, a friend, if they called us up and said something unpleasant that to us personally, we would be affected. At least most of us would be affected. We'd be upset. We'd feel the need to defend ourselves. Doesn't this indicate the level of identification we have with some of these relationships, the importance we give them, the attachment? I think some Eastern philosophies use that word attachment. And then we notice how we give meaning to the words, to every sound around us. We give meaning. If it's a stranger, it's fine. And sometimes we go through very challenging circumstances with those around us. And we get very upset. And sometimes we watch these same roles being played out in a TV program or a movie. Exact same words, circumstances, very similar. Sometimes, of course, exaggerated and far worse, but we watch it as entertainment. We know that one is real, one seems real, and we give it so much more importance and we feel the need to defend. And in the other circumstances, we watch the same words, the same drama being played out, but we observe it as entertainment, not giving any significance to it, not giving real meaning to it, allowing it to pass. Doesn't that imply that we have the ability to choose the meaning we give to all our relationships, to every word, every sound around us? Back to the tools that will allow us to step outside of these stories, outside of this identification. That we have with our cars, our homes, our clothes. Because it's too much to control. It's too much to control. The car is parked outside. The house is here, many people visiting it, sometimes mortgages that imply that the bank owns the house more than we do. Many, many different stories. The fear of whether the home will be broken into. But let's shift our identification in today's practice from all of these objects, all of these people, all of these changing environments into something a little bit more unchanging. And now when I ring the bell, use your breath as a bridge between this world of change outside of us, where our cars and our homes and our clothes and our relationships are. And as you breathe in and begin touching that part deep within, where there is stillness, where there is presence. Where the witnessing being resides, whatever that means to you. And here it is. Feel the sensations of your breath guiding you through the tunnel that is your nasal passage and your windpipe deep into your cells. Feel the stomach wall rising as the breath reaches all the way down into the stomach. How the breath is cradled within the stomach, how the stomach wall rises and how it stretches as you breathe in and then breathe out. Notice your breath exiting through the tips of the nostrils, brushing against your upper lip. And then breathe in again, diving deep underneath the surface of change and movement. And if you like, you can visualize your skin. You can visualize the skin around your body as you would the surface of the ocean. And at the surface of the ocean, it's full of waves, it's full of movement. And on top of the surface of the ocean, there are winds, there are clouds, there are birds, there are all manner of movement, ships, boats of every different size. And then you breathe in, you dive. Each in-breath bringing you deeper and deeper into the stillness. And one thing you will notice is that each time you dive in and then you breathe out and you resurface, that world around you begins to transform itself. Because each time you bring more of that stillness with you, as you resurface and you're beginning to experience all the movement around you through the stillness, less identification, a recognition that the car is separate, the house is separate, the flat is separate, the relationships are separate. They've all simply been opportunities to release that joy, that happiness that's always already been within us. Imagine the volume of the ocean. It's not possible, is it? It's not possible to imagine the volume of water contained within the ocean. And perhaps in the same way, it's not also possible to imagine the smiles, the kindness, I don't know if you want to call it joy, the exhilaration, the excitement, the passion that's contained within us, that wonder. And as we surface, every time we breathe out now, the clouds, they look incredible. The sunsets, they look magnificent. The sunrise and the sunsets, the tapestry in the sky, the boats, the birds, everything looks incredible because we begin to experience all of it for the first time. We don't even know that boats exist, that they can float, that such objects have been created, the wonder of it. Every sunrise, magnificent and unique in its own right and its own way. The shape of the waves, the way in which they reflect the light, the moon in the sky, affecting the tides, everything incredible, wonder through the eyes of this young child that we have collected as we breathe in. This child with its ability to be present, more free from the mind than ever before. And that pretty much sums up this practice. Living in the world with the people around us, with our palaces, our cars, our toys, enjoying them, but letting go of that need to be identified with them. All made up of atoms and molecules. And every scientist will let us know and remind us that anything that's made up of atoms and molecules is undergoing change. And so we can only allow these changes because we have no choices. The people, your phone, which is becoming obsolete, just like your car, just like the paint on your walls. But we enjoy it because we've understood. Now I will ring the bell. An opportunity to stretch the body, to be kind to the body, to massage it, to have a sip of water. Let's do a short visualization practice, or rather, let's be a short visualization practice. We spoke so much about abstract concepts, theories, about the mind, our bodies, our identification with our mind, our identification with our bodies, our identification with the different toys that we have around us, our relationships. And sometimes it's not very easy to grasp, just because the images, the memories, they're so full of emotion. They're so real. Especially if you've had a difficult or challenging past. So we use visualizations. Sometimes they help us to define this relationship we have with our bodies and our mind a little bit better. They help us understand through images, like like a little picture book. That little child within us likes picture books. And so if this picture book, it has an image of a mountain. So bring into your mind's eye this mountain that you're able to imagine. It has a peak. It has an incredible scale. Its width, almost impossible to conceive or perceive through the eyes because of its vastness. And so our eyes are closed so that we can see more clearly. Isn't that incredible that with the eyes closed we see far less? Isn't that an indication of how much space we have within ourselves? And so we see its vastness, how it joins into the earth somewhere far away. This mountain that has been here for a very long time, and perhaps a little bit like that witnessing presence that we have been tapping into. But there is one difference, this witnessing presence. Many teachers say, I haven't experienced it yet, but I hope to, that this witnessing presence has been here far longer than this mountain. It has so much more wisdom, so much more kindness. And this whole mountain put together. And so we're beginning to get a glimpse into this space that is within ourselves. And we imagine our sides becoming the sides of this great mountain, our heads becoming its peaks, the ridges of our nose just like the ridges of the peak of this mountain, the lips, the angles, the skin on the face, the back of the head, the chest and the back, and then the points of contact between our bodies and the surfaces underneath us. Breathing out and allowing the surface underneath us to dissolve and merge into the cushions, into the chairs. If your feet are on the floor, allowing the legs to merge into that carpet of flooring, and your center of gravity traveling downwards deeper and deeper into the crust of the earth. And we're now interested in this relationship with our mind. And the mind is a little bit like the clouds that seem to move around this mountain. Sometimes, because of the height of this mountain, it becomes very misty. Sometimes the clouds go on for miles and miles and miles, and they're so thick and so low that they cover the whole peak. And those are the times of confusion. The identification, am I the mountain or am I the clouds? They don't seem to end. The problems, the challenges, the identification. Do I identify myself as this mountain or the cloud? Which one? Very confusing, but now we know the secret. Just breathe. Become aware of your body. Notice how you are grounded onto the crust of this earth, no cloud can carry you away. So now that we're grounded, we have that ability to observe these clouds still moving, even though they envelop our whole peak. But they are moving, and we patiently observe, notice. And in fact, patience is not required. It's not a requirement simply because in the present moment, it's always the present moment. It's always the now. There is no afterwards, and there is no just now. Always the now, always the now, always the now. And we ground ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper into the stillness that is this rock of awareness, and allow the clouds to pass. And that's even after the clouds have passed. We still notice the whole ecosystem that seems to envelop our bodies, the trees and the plants and the animals and the rivers and the streams and the glaciers and the melting snow, and all undergoing change. Just like all the toys around us, our homes, our relationships. But does the mountain judge winter as bad? Autumn as bad because it takes away the leaves? It changes the color of the leaves? It doesn't judge, does it? Because it's always present. And so let's release the need to judge. Even those parts of in our own histories, in our own past, we often call some of those experiences bad, unpleasant, uncomfortable, and some of them we absolutely hated. All judgments. And now we enter into the present moment, becoming this mountain that exists in the present moment. And we let go of all these judgments, because every single one of those events produced results, neither good nor bad. And the result we have right now in this present moment is that we are sitting here breathing. It's brought us into this meditation room. And if you want to look wider in your life today, perhaps there's one thing that you like about it. One thing. And if you've identified that one thing, perhaps there's another thing. And if it's hard to spot these things that you like, you take a step back each time. If you don't have that Ferrari, you still have this electronic device in front of you that allows you to enter into this practice. And so that's something nice, that's something good. What else? Ears, you can listen. What else? Bodies, you can sit here. What else? The body is alive because it's breathing. And then you begin to identify more and more things. And you release the judgments because they all led to this moment. And if one thing in the past might have been any different, we might not even be alive. We might not have been alive because sometimes things we judge as bad, they might have prevented something more serious from taking place. A broken leg might have prevented you from getting on a plane or some other vehicle that might have brought about more serious consequences. But we can't see it from here. And so we let go of judgment. Allowing autumn to turn into winter, and then winter into spring. And with spring, the emerging fields of flowers and grass and leaves and new life forms and migrating birds and colors and so much more into summers. But again, we let go of the judgment because we know it's constantly changing. We let go of the need to identify, because the minute we identify ourselves with spring, it becomes painful. The minute we identify ourselves with summer, it becomes painful. The minute we identify ourselves with the changing colors of autumn, it becomes painful because that's change. And so we let go, we remind ourselves, we're not the trees, we're not the leaves, we're not the flowers, we're not the animals. We are this great rock of awareness that is witnessing, being, observing. And we allow the clouds, our thoughts, making peace with them. Releasing the need to even identify with the thoughts. And now for the final bell in today's practice. The final bell only for this hour that we spent together, but the bell, in actual fact, symbolizing the beginning of the same way we imagined ourselves coming up from the depths of the ocean, that ocean of stillness. We emerge back onto the surface. But now noticing the surface in a completely new and fresh way. Even the waves. Suddenly discovering our ability to surf through the waves and enjoy the very sport that is called surfing. The exhilaration, the wind, the vastness of the sea surface. No longer trying to control the waves. And sometimes even waiting for that large wave so that we can enjoy the ride that it brings with its scale and its speed.